You're listening to the Cash Flow Academy podcast with Andy Tanner, your source for investing made easy. Here's Andy Tanner.
Hello, everyone. Andy Tanner here. Welcome to the Cash Flow Academy podcast where investing is made simple. Today, I don't know if things are going to be so simple because we're going to take a departure from talking about investing in money and talk about something that is far more important, and it makes money seem really, really small right now. You know, in my home country, the United States, there's been a lot of turmoil from coronavirus and economies, but over this past weekend, the attention of at least my home country is shifted to protest and violence. And I'm going to begin, I apologize if my emotions gets the best of me. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and you know, when I coach basketball, I do it pretty passionately, and when I invest, I do it pretty passionately, and when I do my podcast, it's pretty passionate, but I'm a little nervous today. It might get away from me, but I want to start out by sending a message of love to the family of George Floyd. You know, obviously there's been a lot of attention on him, and so that's where I'm going to begin. We're going to talk a little bit about this, and my guest today is a good Facebook friend of mine, Tim Drisdom. Tim and I don't hang out every day. We're connected mostly by the people we know. We have a lot of mutual friends, and I'll give you a little bit of Tim's history. First of all, Tim, thanks for being on our podcast today.
Hi, Andy. I'm honored. I'm really honored and really excited to be a part and to jump into what we got today.
So I'll spend about 5 minutes setting this up, and then Tim and I are just going to talk, but I'll give you a little bit of his background. Tim is from Southern California, and he was one of the best basketball players in the state. And California is a big state. He went to a Christian high school, and in his division, he was I think you were Player of the Year a couple of times in California, and an All-State player in a state that size. That's saying something. You know, you get Player of the Year in Utah. It's like, well, yeah, but California's a big place. And then he attended the same college I did in the University of Utah. He's about 10 years after I was there. And Tim, the biggest difference between you and me as basketball players is you are actually really good.
Hey, don't sell yourself short, man. You got to be pretty good to play at that level.
I was a bench warmer and kind of hung out to learn from Coach Majerus, and I have some relationships from my playing days that are very special to me, as I know you do.
Absolutely.
And then also the other thing that connects me to Tim is you know, he pursued a pro career, and Tim is very much a man of faith. And you can correct me if the story's wrong, but you know, you had an epiphany and a message where you thought, you know what, I'm going to give up basketball. I'm going to pursue helping young people. And he's a tremendous man of faith, and I'm going to ask him to share that faith with us today. But somehow you wound up back in Utah coaching at my alma mater with Coach Workman, who I went to high school with. So not only did we go to the same college, in a way, we went to the same high school. In a way. So,
in a very roundabout way, for sure.
In a roundabout way. So I'll tell you why I've invited Tim to talk to us a little bit and talk about his feelings living in Utah and some of the history that happened. But let me tell you why I did this podcast. So when I saw the video of that officer, if you can even call him that individual on top of George, I didn't know the context. I saw it on the Facebook link. I clicked on it not knowing what the outcome was, no headline. And so I was watching it almost in real time. And I'm going to tell you what I saw. What I saw was a police officer with his knee on the neck of another human being. And I didn't know what he was stopped for or arrested for. I didn't have any background when I saw it. I just knew that whatever it was, that man was no longer a threat to the officer or those that are around him. And I kept waiting for him to turn him over or lift him up or put him in the squad car for minute after minute. And then I saw that man lose consciousness. And I've done a lot of jiu-jitsu, so I know what it's like to be choked out, and it's a terrifying feeling. When you tap, you pray that the guy will let go. And as I watched him lose consciousness, my level of I don't even know how to describe it. I just could not believe what I was seeing, that this was a member of our human family. And about this time, I was getting kind of emotional over it. I don't know what I might have said to myself, but my son walked in. Tim, he's a young man. He's not even in high school yet. And he said, "Dad, what's going on?" And I didn't know if I wanted him to see it or not, because this was not, the Matrix where there's shootout stuff. This was not Hollywood. This was a real life being taken in real time in front of me. And I said, "No, we're going to watch it." And both of us became distraught. And, it affected me so much that I fell into a lot of despair. I thought, this is never going to be fixed. This is never going to change. I had sadness. I had anger. I put myself in two people's shoes. I put myself in George's shoes to imagine what it would be like being in his shoes, absolutely overwhelmed with the power of other human beings. And I also thought of his family, about what you could possibly say to that family and how they must have felt. So I was pretty down. And I'll also say this about Tim. He's not only a great basketball player, he coaches at Intermountain Christian here in Utah where I live, but he also is a man of faith, and he also has tremendous musical talent. He leads a choir, and he put up a video on YouTube that was also in my Facebook feed not long after I saw, maybe within a day or so, I imagine, after seeing George's video. And that song affected me and was very, very healing to me when I listened to it. Tim and I are different in our occupations and different from our families, and we're from different places. And, he's prayed for me. I said, "Tim, I don't go to church like I should," but it affected me. And I put it on my Facebook page because I wanted others to feel here was a person who was sending out a message of hope and love in a very difficult time. So that's the first half of the story. I was just grateful to Tim. I didn't say anything. I just reposted it, and it was what it was. Well, the other part of this is my brother is a police officer for Salt Lake City. So on Saturday, I call him because I know there's going to be trouble. And I called him and I said, he's my younger brother. He's 8 years younger than me, and I knew what he was going to be experiencing. And as the older brother, I wanted to go to those protests just to get a space in front of him so no one could get to him. And he says, "Andy, it's my day off. I'll probably get called in, but you got to stay home." And so I have this swirling of emotions with George and my empathy for his family and my brother and his safety and all this stuff. And so I'm really not in a good place. And on Saturday, I see Tim's live on Facebook. I'm like, well, let's see what Tim's got to say. And you spoke for quite a while, and I apologize because everything you said was kind of a blur, except one thing you said hit me. You said, "Guys, do what you can to influence your circle." And the moment you said that, I thought, who is my circle? And I don't apologize at all for taking the opportunity for people to often listen to the podcast about money and finance to take a minute and just share with everyone our feelings and let everyone know where I stand and be vocal. And so with that, that's why you're here, Tim. And I called Tim, and I was in a pretty messed up place when I called him. And he said, "Andy, I'm going to pray for you." And he showed love and kind of settled my emotions down a little bit. And I said, "Tim, would you come on the podcast?" He said, "Yes." So with that long-winded introduction, Tim, give us a little bit of your background and what brought you to produce this song and this video.
Yeah, first of all, again, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and onto a show like this that, like you said, we're two different professions. I don't know anything about business. I might need to subscribe to the podcast after this so I can maybe learn some things. But the opportunity that you've given and the platform that you've made available to talk about something that's probably pretty uncomfortable. So I appreciate that. And, that's, and we can get more into that later, but you've done something very brave as far as I'm concerned. And so thank you for that. As far as my background, I mean, you reminded me of more things about myself than I remember. So, but from Los Angeles, California, grew up in inner city Los Angeles for most of my childhood life. Grew up around people that look like me in kind of a lower income situation, violent, pretty dangerous area that we lived in growing up, and grew up in a home where Jesus was definitely at the forefront of it all. My parents raised me 4 boys. I'm one of 4 boys, second oldest out of 4 boys, but just was raised in a home where faith was important, especially considering the fact that things around us weren't always great, right? So that was what we leaned heavily on. And so faith was a huge part of me growing up. And like you said, I ended up being a pretty decent basketball player and earned a scholarship to the University of Utah, played for Coach Majerus, which was, it was an experience in and of itself. Something I would never.
That's a fraternity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that frat, man, cannot be broken by anybody who has never played for Coach. So we definitely share that. I'm sure we're better people because of it. And we've learned a ton about the game as a result of it. But that was an amazing experience for me. I hate that Coach didn't stick around for all 4 years of my college experience. The reason why I chose Utah was actually because, as good of a basketball player as I was, I don't think I was really a high-level athlete. And so, what the reason why I chose Utah and chose Coach was just because he was so cerebral about the game, and that's how I played the game. I played it with my feet on the ground most of the time, and so it was, when he left, it kind of shook me, to be honest, because I felt like my path and the way that I thought life would go was kind of detoured because I just couldn't get the most out of that situation. After that, we had a different coach and a different deal, and I still love the game. I still have passion for the game, and I still want to pursue it professionally. And so, I had the opportunity after my senior year to start that process at least. And then I had I had my first career, huge career injury right after my senior year, which wasn't fantastic. I mean, people Google me, I want to Google you. You're not going to be impressed by that. But afterwards, I had an opportunity because I could still play and all that. But I ended up getting hurt. I dislocated my ankle, and remember being depressed for 3 months, and ended up gaining 70 pounds. I was almost 300 pounds, and I mean, it was a bad time of my life because I felt like, okay, I was being detoured from where I wanted to go. Ended up working my way back into shape. Ended up going to Finland to play, and didn't really think I was going to get an opportunity to play. I just worked at it and got lucky. Ended up having to go over to Finland and actually make the team. They didn't offer me a contract until I got there, which was kind of a cool thing. And that's important. We'll come back to that in a second. But played a couple of years and played in Mexico. Had a little G League. I got drafted into the G League and whatever. The epiphany, as you called it, that I had was when I was on a tour in China. And like I said, I've always been a man of faith and tried to live out my faith from a young kid all the way until now. But what was happening was we were about halfway through the tour, and it was a bus full of American guys who were just we were playing in a different city every night, and everybody was trying to play in order to be seen by that team, that organization of that city, to try to end up with a job. And about halfway through it, I think we all picked up on the fact that those teams really weren't interested in signing Americans. They were really interested in getting high-level competition against their teams to practice against and those type of things. And I started to listen to the conversations on the bus of the guys that were on our team. And it was some of the saddest conversation I've ever heard. There were guys from all around the country, Chicago, New York, and a lot of them were like, hey, when we land back in LA, is it cool if I can stay in, this person's house who lives in LA, because they just could not fathom going home without a job. right? So they were just like, you know, it's either basketball or nothing for me. And I'm sitting there listening to that, and I thought about the fact that, you know, basketball really wasn't all that God blessed me to do. You know, it wasn't the only talent, and it wasn't the only passion that I had. And in that moment, you know, for the first time, and I don't mean to be like super spooky or whatever, but like for the first time in my life, I felt like I heard the voice of God, like, yo, and maybe he said yo to me because that's how I understand it. But he was like, yo, you're done. Like, this is it. You know what I mean? And it was like an instant peace. It wasn't like I was confused about it. It was just like, you know what? Like, no, I think it's time to pursue something else. At that moment, I didn't know what it was. But I said, okay, you know, and we played the rest of the deal, and I got back to Salt Lake. And long story short, you know, about 3 or 4 days later, I was at a concert. I was counting the number of people who was in a particular choir. And all of a sudden, at that moment, I was getting the vision for what we started, and now is known as the Salt Lake City Mass Choir. And so that was my transfer out of athletics into music and into ministry. And that's kind of where I find myself today. I've always had a passion for faith, and I've always had a passion for God, and I've always had a passion for people, you know, and I don't push religion. I don't push my faith. I don't push that on people. But at the same time, I'm also not afraid and not ashamed to talk about that as literally the thing that keeps me alive, literally the thing that keeps me going, and even in tough times like this. So, you know, long story short, that's kind of my journey. That's what has landed me here, and now we're now just living it out as a man and as a family. We're just trying to do our best to live out our faith.
So I want to go and talk a little bit about, set up the second part of our conversation by playing this song that you put out. And I don't know your family. I've known you a little bit, but it was cool to see the family and the talent that's there. And this song affected me musically. It's incredible. There's bridges. It's got this R&B feel, but also this choir feel and this gospel feel. I mean, it's an amazing, just musically. What really brings it into also the heart is the lyrics. And I wrote down a couple notes. I thought, why did this affect me and give me so much healing? And this is a song about empathizing with people. You know, I wrote this down. You know, there's references to people who are lonely, people who have run away and are alone, people who've had addiction, people who have death in their family, people who are struggling financially, people who have lost people who are sick, and the list goes on. I guess the reason it affected me is I was hurting when I heard this song, and I was one of those people that was really in despair. The other thing that's interesting about this song, and I'm going to steal your title and label this podcast, every podcast needs the hot title, and the title of this podcast is going to be Hold On. And it was interesting, what affected me so deeply is I was really to the point where Tim, I was like, this is not going to get fixed. We're going to keep seeing this. We've seen it. I mean, you know, when I first got married, there was Rodney King, and that's a long time ago. Yeah. And I'm like, this ain't getting fixed at all. And my level of hope for this, my son's looking at me and he's like, Dad, why is this? Why? He could not process that video. He couldn't. Coronavirus people say, Andy, help me with my money. Good, great. Here we go. Let's teach. I have no answers for this, none. And that message of hope, you know, there's references to hope in there, and the idea that change is still possible. To have someone like you, to have someone like you giving a message like that at a time like this, and I think it's resonated with all the people. So I want to play it. And you've probably seen it 1,000 times, Tim. Sorry, but
a few. It's all good. I love it. It still affects me, so we're all good.
You're going to have to, and I'm going to figure out how to share my screen here and put this up. But here we go.
What have we come to? Where is the love? We need direction from God above. Just wanna quit, throw in the towel. What is the use in going the extra mile? Bernie. Yeah, this played in life if she should live it or be gone. This one is for that boy who think he getting grown. He make his own decisions cause he ran away from home. This one is for that mama crying on the phone, trying to mend relations cause addiction had her soul. It's a long road to get where we belong, but the journey makes us strong and trouble never lasts too long. It's what we come to. Yeah, I've been looking for the love. The devil trying to hold me up. I got my foot up on his neck while I look to God above. I know that in this battle I've already won. In these times of great despair, look to the one and cast your care. I know it's hard, but just hold on, my brother. Even you, my sister. Got me dealing with some closure. First quarter, Kobe left us. He's supposed to be a closer. Whole world upside down, fighting battles with Corona. Seems to be premature, but maybe it's the real exposure. Put in perspective, everybody got their motive, but only pure intentions make it sit right with your soul. We was made with hearts of gold. Along the way, we crossed that road, trying to find our way back home. This chaos got us in a hole. That's where we come to. Yeah. I've been searching for the love. Build faith off of trust. You see one down, you pick them up. I remember how that was. I found the strength to overcome. There are so many times in my life when I felt so all alone, and so many times in my life when I felt all hope was gone. But in all those times in my life, He walked with me every step of the way. So when you get there in your life, keep the faith. Things are gonna change. You wake up in the morning, it's 1:45. Can't go to work, the baby crying and your mortgage is due. Just got a call from your sister, she said granny is gone. You isolated in your room thinking how to go on. But when the trials come against you and it's too much to bear, look to the sky cause He with you, you can cast all your cares. Everything has a purpose, no more living in fear. So stand tall and show the world that you hear your changes.
First of all, Tim, what a beautiful piece. Thank you for that. Just like when I called you the other night, I really thank you personally for coming out as a leader in your community with a message that's just kind of above it all, in my opinion. Yeah. So tell me what it was like to write that song and to be with your family and perform it and all that stuff.
Yeah, so when I brought up the Finland thing after I had gained all the weight and played myself back into shape, I actually wrote part of this song then. And the inspiration behind it was just like, I had to hold on to my faith in order to like keep pursuing playing basketball. You know what I mean? Like that was part of the inspiration of the song. So I wrote part of it then. And then I recorded it like just chill, you know, no big deal. We were like very, very like we have very little equipment to do anything. It was just something I wanted just to do, and it's I listen to it now and I appreciate the beginnings and all that, but I'm just like, this is trash. But to move, so in 2018 though, there was something that came out in the news, situation that I dealt with directly. With the high school here as I was coaching a basketball game and dealt with some very, very pretty heavy racial stuff that was, again, directed at me.
And let me interrupt you right there, Tim, because I want to give some background on that. Part of the reason it's affected me is you've been a leader in our community, particularly on these issues when it comes to the Utah High School Athletic Association. And I'm just going to call them out right now like they still need to be called out. And I'll just tell everyone, even 12 months ago, I think it was about a year ago, the Salt Lake Tribune came out with a story where even when you go on the road and even in Salt Lake, there's racial slurs and terms being thrown at you, even in this day and age, which inflamed me. And I had quite a bit to say on that last year on my Facebook page when that came out, but I was ashamed that I didn't do what I should have done this then. I should have been more vocal then. It shouldn't take something like George Floyd to make, because I was angry then and wrote my big rant on my own page. But you've experienced this in your home state. And what I want to tell people, what I think is fascinating is, here's on one hand this message of hope, but it's certainly not a message of weakness. Just hanging on. You have called it as it is, but you haven't been evil about it. You just said, look, this is wrong, and I'm not going to stay silent about it.
Yeah.
So I want people to understand that this has gone on in our high schools for quite some time. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted people to
you're all good.
Context.
Definitely. And I remember, and I'm an easygoing person. I always have been. It's been a part of how I've been able to, I feel like, get past some of the harder things. Is that I just try not to let the outside noise affect me. I've always been that way. I don't take myself too serious. I don't take others that serious, and maybe that's offensive too, but I don't know. That's another show, right? But I really it's really hard to really affect me and to offend me. I don't get offended very easily. So I found myself after this particular thing, after hearing all of the things that were said about me, there were some things that we even found out during the trial that I didn't even know that were said about me, and some of the names that were called and the ways they depicted me. And so after all of that, it was nearly impossible for me. As a matter of fact, I actually saw you. That's crazy. I saw you and your kids at a Chinese restaurant. We were sitting down with a group of people right after the trial that day, and you guys walked in this the same night.
I remember that. David's Kitchen.
Yeah, we were at David, and that was the first time I had ever been there. I haven't been there since either. It's great food, but I remember seeing you.
I remember this.
With your family, yeah. So that night we ate and hung out and just kind of try to debrief the situation or whatever. And I ended up back at ICS 10:30, 11 o'clock that night. And I spent a lot of time kind of by myself, really, in that situation, and ended up on a piano in our gym. And just trying to process stuff. And the first part of the video, the first part of of the song, what have we come to? Where's the love? We need direction from God above. The whole thing that came to me that night. So yeah, this song was born out of that
very night. You went back to our high school gym and pounded that out on I can't believe that. That's crazy coincidence.
Yeah. So. And I was just and then I played it and I recorded it and I left it in my voice memo and I turned my phone off and I drove home. That was the end. There was no plan. I just needed to get it out. Whatever it is, I needed to get it out in that moment. And so, fast forward to just the quarantine starts. My brother, Terrence Ernie, who's the artist that's featured on this record, he's in the studio every day. He's a basketball player. He was playing professionally in Mexico. He ends up coming back because they can't play anymore. Their season's done. So he spends countless hours in the studio. It's just what he does. And so one day I just got up and went and sat in the studio with him. And I was like, what are you doing? What are you working on? Whatever. And one thing led to the next. And I was like, hey, find a beat. And we just talked about music terms. Like, hey, find me a beat for this. And I started singing it and playing it on the piano right next to him. So he finds the beat, we start building the song. And I learned that what I did that night, we're in that gym, and what I did 13 years ago, those messages are the same, right? So we just meshed them, and I told him, hey, let's put some thought into some verses, and because I'm not a rapper, but he is, and he's a really, really good one. And so I just said, hey, man, let's throw some verses on it. And as the song began to develop, it just made a ton of sense. And I was like, bro, we need to release this as your song. We need to release this. He's a conscious rapper. That's his thing. Like, he's a Christian. He loves God and all that. But he raps about what's real. He raps about real life, everyday stuff. And so as a marketing thing, it made sense for this to be his song. When we finally finished the song, we just sent it out to a couple of people who we respected their ear and all of that. And, we're in Corona, and I was like, hey, so on the second verse, we got to talk about the coronavirus. Let's just talk to the people about what we feel like we're all going through. The virus, we lost Kobe in January, and like all of these things that are happening. It just feels like, we need to get some hope out there. And really that was what the song was based upon. It's really giving hope during the quarantine and the coronavirus and the Kobe Bryant thing. And it really wasn't about injustice at that moment. And then Arbery came out, and it was like, whoa, this is now becoming even more needed.
Yeah.
And it was like, now we're like rushing, like, hey, we got to get this out the world. I'm reading posts and we're reading things, and everybody's in disarray and all these, and we're trying to get it to the videographer and this whole bit. And then Breonna Taylor happens, where she gets ambushed in her house. They were looking for somebody else.
Yeah.
She ends up getting shot, right? And so here we go again. And we're like, hey, we got to get this song out. We got to hurry up, because the world is like literally becoming more and more hopeless with every passing day. And then George Floyd comes out. And we had already finished the video. But we were like, there's no way we release this song without talking about the right now injustices that are happening, right? So it ended up morphing into this thing that, unfortunately, and I tell people, like, if we would have waited another week, then we can put somebody else in the video who's been treated unfairly. If we wait another month, then we got 5 more stories. Unfortunately, this is not, like, to your point earlier, this really isn't getting any better. And so, when we talk about your changes coming and hold on and all of those things, it's really not about our situation around us getting better. It's less about that than it is us becoming better in a crappy situation. Us changing, changing our perspective, us becoming more empathetic, us becoming more sensitive to the reality and aware of the reality that this really, really does exist. And then now, what are we going to do about it? Kind of speaking to your point, what are we going to do in our immediate circle to affect the change that we're singing about? So
those were the things that affected me so much. Is this is a message of empathy to everyone suffering in any way.
Yeah.
And that was the part that just blew me away, because the crescendo at the end of this is about change is coming. I'm like, how can they release this when I don't see it? And that's probably why it affected me so much. It's like, I've lost faith. I had lost faith. And so it was an interesting day. So I'm just grateful for what you did. I want to speak, you mentioned it's uncomfortable stuff. I want to talk about it because I want to hear what you feel about it in your life growing up in LA, and especially being here in Salt Lake, where it's like white is like, there's probably no whiter place you can go than Salt Lake City. And
Idaho.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess so. Not by much though.
Right.
But I want to share with you my feelings. I'm just going to share my feelings about this, because when you said influence your circle, I've just kind of been a guy that, friends, people to me have just been people. I got white friends, black friends, I got Hispanic friends. I've traveled all over the world, and I've, like Bon Jovi says, I've seen those million faces. I didn't rock them all, but I've seen them. I've been to South America and have the Latino, embrace me. I've been to Asia and have the Asian community embrace me. So I've been everywhere. I'm going to share with you what my wife and I have been talking about.
Okay, cool.
So my wife, this is tough to talk about. So my wife and I, she's got a little farm. She grew up on a farm in central Utah. And we go down there on that private property to do our target shooting and stuff like that. And we're driving home, and man, I got an arsenal in my car. I have an arsenal in the car. And I'm driving home, and my wife's got a lead foot, and we get pulled over for speeding. And the officer comes up, and he says, hey, you're going, too fast. I said, officer, before you say anything, I want you to let you know I got some firearms in the car. And he says, okay, well, thanks for letting me know. I go, no, I got a lot of firearms in the car. We've been doing this for shooting. I just wanted to, give you a heads up. And he says, fine, wrote us a ticket and sent us on our way. And, it wasn't like a pit stop at the Indy 500, but it wasn't very long. It wasn't a very long pit stop.
Yeah.
And last night, I know you and I, we saw each other at David's Kitchen, but some of the guys I played with, I hang out with a lot. And we go to 4th of July together, and we go to Halloween together, and we break bread at each other's houses, and we're just humans. And I said, Mars, some of our friends, they get pulled over like that. And if they say they got a firearm on the car, they're going to get searched. They're going to get pulled out of their car, and they're going to get frisked, and they're going to get questioned, and they're going to get checked, and get searched. Now, this is important. I know not all officers do that, and that's important for me to say. But I know there's some that do. And I says, I can think of a million instances. I can go to a basketball game, and, people don't like me for different reasons. And I'm not always kind to the officials, that I could do better there. Yeah. But no one has ever, from the crowd said anything about the color of my skin or judged me. I've never had to deal with that. Yeah. And to know that I have friends that I love dearly that go through that crap every day, I'm just going to let people know where I stand on this. To those who don't agree with me, I will just say you're missing out. You're missing out on the beauty of people. You're missing out. You're closing down a circle of friendships that you could have, and you're just freaking missing out. Your loyalty, what I've loved about you, Tim, is your loyalty has been to your faith, not any individual color. You've called it, when you've seen evil, you've called it evil, and you haven't tolerated it, but you've done it in a way that is loving. And the word long-suffering comes to mind, and passages from Sunday school come to mind, and Good Samaritan comes to mind, and extra miles and turning cheeks. And how you have the strength to do that is, I just honor you for that. And I just want to tell anyone, if you're an officer and you get off on any kind of power trip or any type of abuse of your oath, then get out of that profession, because we don't support you. I worry, because I think, well, if I say I'm proud of my brother, am I am I a racist now? No, I'm loyal to justice and love. I don't care what your profession is. I don't care what color you are. And I just felt, Tim, that after you said influence your circle, that I was going to let everyone know in my circle where I stand. So you have the floor, brother.
In order for something to be different, and in order for that to be the opposite, or for the opposite to be true, it's something that is taught. Like, the opposite has to be taught, because we don't just walk outside and look across the way and be like, oh, that's a white guy, therefore this or that. Those things are taught. Just like loving someone naturally as a kid and embracing whoever's in your circle as your friend is natural to you, the other side isn't. And so when it comes to influencing your circle, parents need to do their jobs in the home. That's your first circle of influence. What am I going to teach my kids? What am I going to allow my kids to believe about the world that they live in and about the people that occupy that space? You know what I mean? Yeah. And if the narrative out loud is one of racism and one of prejudice and one of disparaging people because of the color of their skin, if you know that's a narrative that your kid is hearing now because of the world that we live in with social media and just so easily, like there's so much easy access to all of this stuff, then now they're being taught something else by someone else. Now to sit there and not address it is going to be an issue. You know what I mean? Like, we can't anymore shelter our kids from things that we might have been sheltered from when we were growing up. You know, some of the injustices or some of the things you talk about. Rodney King, I remember that as a kid. I still remember the LA riots. Yeah. I remember driving down the street and watching buildings burn and seeing, graffiti on the building that says owned by Blacks so that nobody would bother it. Like, I still remember those things. But really at the core, because of what I experienced in my home, and it was never like, we never had this, like, my parents never sat us down and said, white people are good or bad, or Hispanic people are good or bad, or Black people are good or bad. Like, we never had to sit down and have that talk. It was lived out in front of us that we're supposed to love everybody. That was just it. Like, we just saw love. And if you live that out in front of your kids, and now we got to go a step further now that they've been exposed to this thing and say, hey, I know that this is happening over here, but this is not the right way. I know that George Floyd, is being murdered before our eyes, and we need to sit down and say, this is what racism looks like. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we have to take that, and when I say we, and I'm specifically speaking to white people at this point, because we know what it is. We know exactly what it is as people of color. We know exactly what it is. We call it out. But I think there's a level of fear, or a level of, this really hasn't affected me, and so I don't really know what to say about it, so I won't say anything. I think the time is out for that. And so I applaud the fact that you sat with your kid and didn't try to shield him from it, and didn't try to create something that wasn't there. Like, you guys had real emotions about it. And then you go a step further and say, you call me after and say, hey, Tim, I have no idea what to say about this or where to be about this, but I'm impacted to influence my circle. And at the end of the day, there's going to have to be a lot of people that are okay with being uncomfortable. They're going to have to be a lot of people that are okay with losing what they think are friends over something that is right. I'll choose right over anything.
I think the mistake I made is, I never registered. Like, I would never deny that there was racism or that it happened. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you watch these videos and see TV. It's obvious. The mistake, and this is what I'd say to white people, is you may not have any animosity or any racist feelings, so you think, I'm okay. I'm okay. Well, I don't have those feelings. That's another person's problem. But my feeling is it's time to be more vocal about this. It's not just okay to quietly love your friends and say, well, I'm not a racist. You need to be an anti-racist. Speak up and talk about it. And so, Tim, there's not a better message than what you ended with, is that of love. You're better in the Bible than I am, but I know there's something that says you don't kill. So that's for police officers too. I know there's stuff in the Bible says don't steal. So all those guys looting, white, black, brown, knock that off. But I remember there's also a passage where they went to Jesus and said, what's the great commandment in the law? He said, well, all these other laws really are based on loving your neighbor. And if you do that one, everything else seems to fall into place. So with that, I'll quit blubbering. I apologize to the listeners. I usually don't blubber. When you're talking about the stock market, there's not much to cry about, Tim. But Tim, thanks for being on, man. And
I appreciate you, man.
If there's stuff I can do to support you, please reach out.
Absolutely, man. Thanks again, man. And we got to do something offline.
I'd love to do that. You've been listening to the Cash Flow Academy. My guest has been Tim Drisdom. And for the outro, I'm going to have my producers do an encore of your song. So we'll let that take us out. Thanks, Tim.
Man. Thank you, Andy.
What have we come to? Where is the love? We need direction from God above. Just wanna quit. Throw in the towel. What is the use in going the extra mile? Bernie. Yeah, this one is for that lady sitting home alone, contemplating life if she should live it or be gone. This one is for that boy who think he getting grown. He make his own decisions cause he ran away from home. This one is for that mama crying on the phone, trying to mend relations cause addiction had her soul. It's a long road to get where we belong, but the journey makes us strong and trouble never lasts too long. It's what we come to. Yeah, I've been looking for the love. The devil trying to hold me up. I got my foot up on his neck while I look to God above. I know that in this battle I've already won. In these times of great despair, look to the one and cash or care. I know it's got me dealing with some closure. First quarter, Kobe left us. He's supposed to be a closer. Whole world upside down, fighting battles with Corona. Seems to be premature, but maybe it's the real exposure. Put in perspective, everybody got their motive, but only pure intentions make it sit right with your soul. We was made with hearts of gold. Along the way, we crossed that road, trying to find our way back home. This chaos got us in a hole. That's where we come to. Yeah. I've been searching for the love. Build faith off of trust. You see one down, you pick them up. I remember how that was. I found the strength to overcome.
There are so many times in my life when I felt so all alone, and so many times in my life when I felt all hope was gone. But in all those times in my life, He walked with me every step of the way. So when you get there in your life, keep the faith. Things are gonna change.
You wake up in the morning, it's 1:45. Can't go to work, the baby crying and your mortgage is due. Just got a call from your sister, she said granny is gone. You isolated in your room thinking how to go on. But when the trials come against you and it's too much to bear, look to the sky cause He with you, you can cast all your cares. Everything has a purpose, no more living in fear. So stand tall and show the world